Previous session, what we discussed about different types of calculation views. Okay, and we discussed about this projection node, how to use projection node also. And in today's session is mainly regarding the input parameter variable and the variable creation on a calculation view, and what is their difference. Okay, how we use those input parameters and variables is we are going to see. So this is one of the calculation view which we created in our earlier class. So the functionality of this calculation view is we taken one projection. In this projection we taken some data, and on top of it we mapped it to an aggregation level. In the aggregation level we created some calculated columns. Sorry, in the projection node we created some calculated columns, and we derived month, date, cal month, day information from cal month information from the created on field here. So when we see the output of this calculation view, the output of this calculation view is like this. So we have data for January, February, March and April months of 2022. So now the topic we are going to discuss is the input parameter variables. Okay, and the variables. So before going to input parameter variables, let's first go for a variable section. Okay, so you see here when you click on the semantics tab, and in the semantics tab, at the last on the details window, on the last tab is nothing but parameters or variables. Okay, so this is our section what we are going to learn today. So before parameters are nothing but input parameter, and variables, which is the second thing which I am going to talk. So first let's see about variables, then go for input parameter variables. So how to create a variable and why we need a variable in a calculation view. Okay, for example, what is happening when you click on this, when you do a data preview on a calculation view, so you have different options: analysis, distant value, raw data. So if you are going for raw data, what is happening? So by default, based upon the max row selection here, 2200, you are getting the max 200 records here. If you can change this 200 till max 5000, you cannot give not more than 5000. Okay, system doesn't accept here. So this is only data preview when you do from the HANA Studio application. But in general, what was the real-time use of this calculation view? Users will try to execute this calculation view on their AF4 reports, or we may consume it in a different reporting tools. Okay, so what will happen for those reporting tools? There is no limit of data extraction. So if you run the CV, it will extract all the data which will come out of this calculation view. Okay, for example, this T1 underscore sales contains 5 million records. If you run this particular CV on your reporting tool, it will extract 5 million records into your output, into your report output. So which is not always correct, because for extraction and doing some applying some logics in the calculation view, extracting it to your report will take some time. Okay, and one more thing is, we don't need all the time 5 million records to be displayed on our report. That is also one point. So to restrict the data which is coming to our report output, we create filters. So this is just like in BW terminology, how we create global filters for a BEX query. In the same way, for calculation views, we will create variables in the variables. Okay, how to create a variable? Here, if you click on this plus symbol, there is an option called create variable. So let's create one variable on material. So create variable. So when you click on create variable, it is asking for the variable name. So I am giving var underscore material. Okay, and attribute. So what is attribute means? So variables can be applied only on attributes, not on key figures. That's why it is clearly mentioning attribute. Okay, when you click on this drop down button, it is showing all the attributes that are available on your model calculation view. So now I am going to apply this material filter on material column. So I am selecting my attribute as material. Okay, so after that, the important point is the selection type. Is this variable is of single value, interval or range? These three only will allow. Okay, if compared to our Bex Query Designer, in Bex Query Designer, apart from these three, we have selection option also. That is not possible here. Okay, single value, interval, range, and multiple entries also one of the other option. Four options are there. Okay, so now first of all, let's see for a simple example, single value, then go for remaining others. So I'm giving my selection type as single value. It means at when I'm giving selection on this particular variable, at any point of time, I can give only one filter on it, either M1, M2 or M3 like that. Okay. So I'm giving single value. And if you want to add any default filter to your calculation view, you can add those values here. Okay. I'm clicking on OK. So now what happened? One variable got created here. And if you go to column section, you see because you created this variable on top of material column, it is already mentioning here on the semantics on the semantic when you on the details tab on the column section, you already can see there was a filter applied on your material column. Okay, I am activating my calculation view. Yeah, and then let's go for data preview. So when I go for data preview, this is the variable and this is equal, and here I need to give my selection. So it's three dots. It will go. It will a SQL statement will give the F4 help dialog also based upon some it will do some work and then it will populate this one. So I am selecting M1 as my filter and click on OK and go to raw data. So now what happened? Only M1 data will come into your output screen. Okay. So now what is happening here? If I click on refresh one more time, since it is an optional variable, if you don't give anything also, what happen? If you don't give any value, then it will fetch all data from your output screen. Sorry, from your source tables or calculation view output. Okay, and the important point here is yeah, that point I will cover later. Not now. Maybe it will be confusion. So yeah, this is how we create a variable and how variable works when we execute the calculation view. Now let's go to this variable and a little bit update the settings of this variable. I'm going to this one and I want to edit this variable properties. I'm clicking on this edit button after selecting the variable. Now what I want to check, I want to show you how you can give multiple entries. Yeah, enabling checkbox is easy, but at a execution time, if you want to provide multiple values, how it is possible, I want to show you. Okay, now this particular variable is converted into multiple single values. Now click on OK, activate, and go to your data preview. Click on refresh button. If you click on refresh button, it will go for. You see, when you say multiple single values, then this plus symbol will be enabled here. Okay, this is when compared to our BW. So because we are from reporting background, we always compare BW. In BW at the info package level, when you see filters, there also you can see this plus kind of operation. Okay, so similar kind of operation here it is. So when you click on plus symbol, one more variable comes here with the same name. So you can give multiple values in this way, not one after another, but we need to give multiple values for each line here. So M1, M2. Now M1, M2 data will come to our output. You see M1 and M2. So this is how to create a multiple single values filter. So what else we can change here? So next one is mandatory. Sometimes what happens, because this variable is optional, if a user don't give any selection and click on execute, then what happen again, if my base table data contains too much data, all data will again come to the output screen, which may hang the report and all, Excel sheet and all. Correct. So you want to so in those scenarios we want to restrict the user to explicitly maintain the filter here. Means by making it mandatory, what we can say, we are forcing the user to provide some input. Okay, so now this time I unchecked the multiple entries. I'm giving single value and I'm giving is mandatory enabled checkbox. So by doing so, what will happen here? when user executes the calculation view, he must, you see there is a star came after input parameter variable, he must give some value. Without giving any value, if he tries to execute the report, this window is not closing. One or more mandatory values has not been entered. So you must and should you give some value to the selection screen. So this way we can restrict the user to provide some values here. So variable concept is very easy, which is straightforward concept. Okay, straightforward concept, just like our Bex query filters. Okay, but input parameters are little bit different compared to this one. Okay, so I hope variable concept is clear so far. Okay, so nothing, pretty much like you can create multiple variables here, where whichever variables we created an attribute section, those will be automatically displayed here on the variable one. And if you want, you can provide some default values also to your variables. Okay, so this is about variables concept. And when coming to this variable concept, if you go to aggregation node, you see in the aggregation node you cannot see this variable filter at all. See, you cannot see this variable filter. In sales data also you cannot see any option to create variables. So variables can be created only from the semantic node under parameters or variable section. This is the only place where you can create variables. Okay, and apply into our schema. And in general, as per the concept point of view, variables will be applied on the output of your calculation view. Okay, conceptually if we talk how it will be applied, it will be applied on the results dataset. So whichever result dataset as this calculation view is providing, on that result dataset your variable will be applied. When we compare this our Bex BW, the query also doing the same thing. So whatever query filters you pass, what happens on the multi-provider, it goes as a where condition on the multi-provider. Select, okay. In the same way, it here also whatever variables you are passing, those variables are passing to this. Those variables are passing to this calculation view in a where condition only. Okay. But SAP, did the developments. When you click on this execute button, what is happening? This calculation is executing and variables are applying. But in the backend, SAP is writing some code, to derive the output. So SAP intelligently providing these variables not on the top level, but it is pushing down the filters to base level. Okay, so that concept we will cover on a different session, not right now. But at this point of time, if you want to know the way what is a variable can be created at semantic level under parameter variable section, and we will create variables on the output columns. So we can create variables with single, multiple single, interval and range, types. Okay, this is all about variables. Now let's jump into the second concept called input parameter variables. Okay, so this input parameter variables can be created from here also. From the semantic parameter variable section, we can create input parameter variables. Not only from here, if you go to projection node, in the projection node you have an option called input parameter variables, and in aggregation node you can see input parameters. It means input parameter can be created anywhere in our calculation view design. Okay, not only from the semantics node, but anyway other design nodes also we can create input parameter variables. That is the difference between variable and input parameter. Not only that, we have more other differences are there. We will discuss one by one. Okay, so now let's create one input parameter variable at this projection node. Okay, so why exactly we need input parameter variable when we have variables? So why we need input parameter variable? SAP designed input parameter variables to restrict the data at base level. Okay, so variables will be applied on the top node level, which is after the calculation view execution, which takes lot of time for the CV execution, and then it is applying the filter. Okay, so this consumes lot of memory also if CV is having lot of data, because filter is applying at the end point. But input parameters are designed to apply the filter on the base node itself. Okay, it means if you pass some input parameter filter to your calculation view, that filter will be directly goes to the node where you want to apply. and it will apply directly at that point of node itself, and it starts extraction. Due to this, what benefit we are getting? Due to this, the data is the data set is minimizing at the place where you apply input parameter. Okay, for example, let's take this as an example. Okay, I have if I don't provide any, yeah, it is an optional, right? So I have 9 records here. Okay, January, February, March, April. So if I pass my filter on April 2022 via variable to the calculation view, then generally like it is not happening practically, but in terms of theoretical discussion. So the 9 records will come till semantic layer. On semantic layer, because of variable, it fetches only, for 3 records. Okay, it fetches only 3 records. But if you pass the same filter via input parameter variable, which is applied at a projection node level, then what happens is at the projection itself, the data extraction will happen only 3 records, these 3 records because of April 2022, and only those 3 records will be processed to the further layer. Clear? So this is how the input parameter works and the variable works. Okay, so mainly input parameters are created to filter the data at a base node level, whereas variable filter the data at the semantic level. Okay, that's how the difference is. Now let's try to create one input parameter variable at a sales at a projection node level. Right click here, new. So here also, just like variable, it is asking some option to create a I underscore material. Here I want to put my filter on material. Okay, and you see parameter type, because it is input parameter, that's why it is asking parameter type. Is it a direct parameter, column, or derived from table, or static? And these are the different ways we can provide the one. So as of now, let's take one column. So when taking column means I want to apply this input parameter on one of the column in my projection. Okay, so which column I want to apply, that column information you need to give below. So view or table for your help. So this is the CV sales, and reference column which I want to apply is material. When you are applying it, when we are applying this input parameter variable via table or view help, which you see in the reference column section, I am trying to apply my filter on the projection node. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so all the columns from the projection node are available here. So I want to apply it on material. So material is coming like this, and click on OK. So you see currently it is a single value only. Okay, single value, because I'm not selected multiple entries here, are mandatory not selected. In this scenario, this particular input parameter variable is of type single value, and which is going to apply on material. So by selecting this column material, click on OK. So you see, if you go to column section, you are not applying any filter on the projection yet. You just created this input parameter variable, and when creating this input parameter variable means when we create a variable, we must tell them on which column data type. So input parameter means the variable must accept some input from you. So what kind of input you are going to provide is, are you going to provide a date kind of input, are you going to provide a number, or you are going to provide a character string? So we need to specify some data type, to understand kind of input parameter it is. So for this scenario, you are referring to your column material. So I am going to provide an input of material kind of data to filter my one. So it means you are not applying filter on the material column. You just define this input parameter with the data type and length as of material information. Okay, if material is of 18 length, then this input parameter will accept 18 characters. Okay, if you define this material with the date, then this input parameter will accept date format of input only. Clear? You not yet applied this input parameter variable on any of your column. So now we need to apply it one by one. So for example, if you want to apply this input parameter variable on your material column, then right click on material, apply filter, and in the apply filter equal to single value, so equal to values. When you go for values, you can fixed values which are coming from the table. Apart from fixed values, on the type you have one more option called input parameters. On the input parameter section, you can see all the input parameters that are defined in the input parameter folder. As of now, I have only one, so I underscore material I am selecting, click on OK. So when you do this one, what is happening? Now filter got applied. So when you applied manually your filter on this column, then this input parameter got applied as a filter on the material column. If you don't do this kind of operation, then still it is input parameter variable which is not applied on any. If you're not given in this scenario in this way. Now if you go to your expression, you see material is equal to dollar I underscore material dollar. It means input parameter variables prefixed and postfixed with dollar symbol like this. Okay, cancel. Now click on activate. Important point to notice here is if you create an input parameter variable on one node, it can be visible throughout your calculation view. So for example, if I go to aggregation node, if I expand input parameter C, still I can see my input parameter variable I material. Okay, if you go to semantic, here also you can see. So if you create a input parameter variable once in your projection, in your design node, it is visible all over your calculation view on all the nodes, I can say. Okay, important point. So next, now let's try to execute, do data preview of your this one. Okay, since I have one, okay, let's remove variable. Since we are talking about input parameter variables, let's remove the variable filter from our query. So how to delete it? Just delete this one. Yes, so variable is deleted. Let's activate. Now we have only one input parameter variable I underscore material. Now I am doing data preview. When I do data preview, it is, you see how variable is coming on the selection screen. Input parameter variable also comes under on the selection screen. Okay, so now if I provide for example M1 here, because it is a single value input parameter, I am giving M1 here. So click on OK. Raw data, you see M1 data came here. Go to refresh. Is it a mandatory field or a selection optional, optional variable? It's an optional variable. So let me try to not to give anything and click on OK. You see, in input parameter variable, if you don't provide any value, then you are not getting any data at all to your output screen. Okay, but in case of variable, if you don't give anything for an optional variable, it will still fetch all your data to your output. But input parameter variable doesn't work in this way. Input parameter means definitely you must give some value to it. If you don't give anything, system will consider is a null filter, and it will fetch only null records from your data set. So this is the one more difference between input parameter variable and a normal variable. Okay, so you must always provide selections. Next, so when you are applying input parameter variable, so on your projection node on your material, so what happened here, you given it as a single value equal to. Okay, if you change your property of input parameter variable from single to multiple entries, then you must redefine your material selection filter also from equal to from equal to list of values, because multiple single values comes under list of values. Okay, so this is the how input parameter will be is created and it is applied on the project on our query calculation view design. Next thing, so let's see, just cover this example also. I underscore material, I am making it as multiple entries. Okay, and clicking on OK, and then I am going to material, edit filter, and instead of equal to, make it a list of values, and go to value list, and go to, instead of fixed, we are going to give input parameters, and click on select this I material, click on OK, click on OK. So when you make this filter as list of values, yesterday also we seen this filter will be applied in a different way. Sorry, in the filter expression, you see all the list of values will be applied in the form of in operator, in bracket begin the column name comma input parameter variable, like this. Click on cancel. Let's activate this calculation view. Let's try to do one data preview with multiple single values. So I am giving M1 here. So I'm clicking on one more since multiple single values, I'm giving M2 here and click on OK. You see M1, M2 data came to my output. So now I'm going to teach you one more point. So this is your output on HANA Studio. Here there is a log. So show log. If you go to show log, here you can see what are the executions you done frequently. So when with respect to this time, the latest time here is 110 2021 1 what is this one 0505 20 hour 21 hour. So this is the latest one. Okay, so this is the latest generated SQL statement. So double click on the statement. You see this is the generated SQL statement by SAP when you click on execute button. Okay, copy this one once, close this one, come to take one notepad, let's paste it here and see what exactly it came. So generate SQL by SAP. So it is taking select top 5000 column information, and then from where it is reading, select it written on our calculation view CV sales. Okay, and whatever input parameters we are giving, those input parameters are as a placeholder. It is passing to this calculation view in terms of placeholder. Okay, and you see I material is equal to M1 M2. You see, this is very important. It's when you want to write some SQL statements on calculation use, you can take any of it like this, and you can modify this particular select statement as per your requirement. Done. So this is the so now let's discuss about the difference between calculation view and input parameter and variable one last time. Okay, just so variables are applied on the top node of the calculation view, and whereas input parameters variables can be applied at the base node level, where we apply it on the base node level. Okay, so input parameters are mainly used to restrict the data coming from the base tables, which consequently help us in the performance of the calculation view. Okay, and once you created an input parameter variable at one node, it can be displayed on all other nodes also. Okay, it can be used in any other node of the query design, CV design. Okay, next thing is yeah, these points are enough, and one more point extra if you want to specify morely. So once you define input parameter variable, you must apply it on the CV, or else it is just only the variable created. It for example, I'm removing this filter on my material. I'm activating. I created input parameter variable, but I am not applied on any of my column. So if I click on execute button of my CV, sorry, data preview. Raw data. You see, if I am not applied on any of the column, then it won't come. It won't it won't come into existence when the data preview is happening. So input parameter variable must be applied. But in terms of variable, if we create it, definitely we create it on top of any one of the existing column. So it will come by default on the selection screen. Okay, so these are the things we need to, and for a variable, definitely for an optional variable, if we don't pass any value, then system will fetch all data from the calculation view. But for an optional input parameter variable, if we don't pass any value, then system doesn't bring any data. System consider it as a null operator, and it won't fetch any information to the output screen. Okay, these are the important points which you can say in interview point of view also for this input in terms of calculation view, input parameter and variable. Okay, I'm stopping recording.